thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh,
to
no,
talk
glad
with
to
us.
do it.
I know it's a very busy time with just a few days to go.
Yeah.
I actually want to start back a few months ago. We had the opportunity to speak with Secretary Clinton back in January, right before the caucuses, before everything got really crazy. And we asked her what the most surprising thing she had encountered on the campaign trail was. And she talked a lot about hearing stories of mental health issues and substance abuse
Yeah,
at a
the
level
opioid issue.
she never expected. I'm curious whether it's that or something else. What, since you've joined her, have you been surprised by?
Well, this is a pleasant surprise. I have been very pleasantly surprised. I think I've been in about 40 states that the physical circumstances may be different, but the voters I talk to are just like Virginia voters. Virginia's a pretty good microcosm for the country, urban, rural, suburban, Democrat, Republican, Independent. And I've been in politics in Virginia since 1994. So as I travel around the country, you hear different spins on issues, but I really feel like the work that I've done in Virginia has really helped me understand broader than Virginia. And that's been a little bit of a surprise. So, I would share that the one issue that Hillary talked about that was continued to kind of surprise her, continues to surprise me, which is this opioid issue. Because I saw a chart recently that showed opioid deaths, OD deaths per state, from the ones that are doing the best to the ones that are doing the worst. And it's unlike any chart I've ever seen. And the reason is, in the best 10 states, there are rich states and poor states. And in the worst 10 states, there are rich states and poor states. And if you look at a problem like that, usually the toughest ones are states that have the lowest income. This is a problem that reaches across every income, every demographic. And I think Hillary heard that in a lot of stories, and it really puts a burden on our shoulders to try to address it.
Also on the issue of surprise, but probably a lighter note, what is the most surprising thing you've learned about Secretary Clinton since you've gotten to know her better?
One thing that I've learned that I just find very powerful, that I didn't know before, I don't know that I would say I'm surprised, but it's just a notable trait, what a good listener she is. My wife Ann and I were on a bus tour with her and President Clinton right out of the convention. And again, in interactions with folks on a rope line or in discussions with me or with staff, she is a penetrating listener who will ask questions and elicit things from others and then really take them seriously. I've said things to her that I didn't know she was paying a lot of attention to, but then I've heard her say 3 or 4 days later, well, she was really listening. My wife noticed this and pointed this out to me. Once we were engaged in quite a discussion on the bus tour as we were stopped somewhere, and the bus driver was a woman from Georgia who was trying to do a little bit of FaceTiming with her child. And Hillary, while engaged in the discussion, was also trying to get us to talk quietly because, hey, the bus driver's doing a FaceTime with her child. We didn't notice that, but Hillary noticed it. Yeah. And I think that trait is really important. Listening is a lost art in life generally. It's definitely a lost art in politics. So whether you're working with the Congress and trying to find common ground, or whether you're grappling with a really tough national security challenge and you have different points of view around the table, she'll be able to elicit everybody's best advice. And then she's a decisive person in terms of making decisions. But you don't want somebody who thinks they know everything making decisions. You want somebody who will get the best information from people and really listen to them.
Definitely. Jumping a little bit into what everyone wants to know, which is what's going to happen on Tuesday.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, polls were super in your favor. They've definitely tightened up a little bit. I'm curious, do you think that's attributed to some of the more negative headlines that have come out recently? What do you think is going on with that right now?
I really view it as just a natural tightening. We came out of the Philadelphia convention pretty far ahead, but then by the day of the first debate, September 26th, it was dead even. Then we had a few good weeks through the end of the debates, maybe the 20th of October, then it narrows down again. Undecided voters tend to kind of go home, so you might have people undecided, but they lean Republican or lean Democrat. They tend to go back to their normal place, and I think that's happened. We were seeing evidence of tightening, about 10 or 12 days ago, and I think that's kind of natural. I told Hillary, I encouraged her to run in April of 2014. That was about a year before she declared, but I just said, you got to consider yourself the underdog because you're trying to do something that nobody has ever done. So I don't care what a poll says, and I don't care what an editorial says. You are the underdog because you're trying to make history, and you got a headwind blowing in your face if you're trying to make history. So this race is finishing kind of the way that I thought it would be all along. Maybe it's because I run races in Virginia. Virginia is a close state, but it's sort of finishing where I thought it would be, close. I like where we are. I wouldn't trade our spot for the other side's spot. some of the early voting trends, registration of voters, absentee ballot requests I like, but we're taking nothing for granted.
Another point sort of on polling, one of the things that came out just this week, there was a poll, I think something like 8 in 10 voters had said that they were repulsed by the election. There's definitely some negativity in this campaign cycle. How do you speak to those disillusioned voters? How do you convince them that politics isn't horrible?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I worry about this. I'm an optimistic person, but this is something I worry a little bit about. I think post-Citizens United, once the floodgates open and anybody can dump in money, especially sort of the super PACs that don't have to disclose their donors, we are in a world where there's just too much negative campaigning, and that hurts. And that's why Hillary and she said, there's 4 things in the first 100 days I want to tackle. I want to do a big bill to grow the economy. I want to tackle immigration reform. I want to get our national security professionals to help us assess the war against ISIL and Al-Qaeda and decide what chapter we're in and what success looks like going forward. But she said the 4th is I want to try to tackle campaign finance, because we have a system that sadly kind of maximizes the negative, especially in ads, and it does make people feel worse about our country than we should. We should be proud about our country. We do so many things well, and we're still the example to so many around the world. I'm a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. I travel to see our troops overseas, and I hear what people in other countries talk about us. They admire so much about what we do. So we need to figure out a way to elevate the dialogue. What Hillary and I will do, if we have the blessing of being elected Tuesday, is we got to go to work in our tone of what we say, in the team that we put together, and in the policies that we promote right out of the gate with Congress, to do things that show people, okay, they're going to try to be an administration for everybody, not just those who voted for them. Hillary understands this very well. We've talked about it. She had a great track record, especially in the Senate, of working across the aisle, and I think I do too, both as governor and as senator. I've tried to build that up. We're going to be tested in that way, and we have to be true to that, bringing everybody together. The stronger together theme that Hillary chose for the campaign. We got to be true to that.
Definitely. I actually want to just jump off one thing that you mentioned briefly. You talked about terror. There was the news that came out just yesterday about the threat on New York, Texas, and Virginia, which your home state. I'm just curious, how concerned are you about that right now?
We have to be concerned about it every day. I don't have an unusual degree of concern for Monday, but we do have to be concerned. And this gets right back into, qualifications to be president. The battle against terror is largely a battle against non-state organizations. So these are not nations that follow the Geneva Conventions. They're ISIS and Al-Qaeda are trying to strike at any vulnerable point they can find. And I'll tell you, a challenge is we're now closing in on ISIS with the U.S. Iraqi Kurdish effort against Mosul, and we'll do the same in Raqqa, Syria. But what ISIS will do is, okay, we're losing on the battlefield, maybe we better try to inspire an attack here or there. How do you stop that? That's not primarily a military thing. It's primarily the sharing of intelligence. We have to share intelligence with allies. Here's somebody who's traveling, better watch out for this person, or we got a tip, we want you to be aware of it. Hillary understands the power of alliances. She was Secretary of State. Donald Trump says NATO's obsolete. We don't need those alliances anymore. If you tear up alliances in this world, you become weaker, not stronger. Hillary understands that alliances are important, because who do you share intelligence with? You share intelligence with your allies.
Excellent. I know we're tight. I'd love to put one more question in so we get to it. One of the things that I read when we were doing research is that for decades you've attended a racially diverse church in Richmond. And I'm just curious how that experience, whether on a political or even just a personal level, has informed how you think about race relations in this country and Black Lives Matter and things of that nature.
Well, when I took a year off when I was in law school to work in Honduras for a year. And it was a very powerful year for me in many ways. But when I was there, I read the great line of Martin Luther King's, "The most segregated hour in the week is 11 o'clock Sunday morning." Boy, that really made an impression on me, because I thought about my own church-going experience up to that point, and it was true. So I decided when I came back from Honduras that I wanted to try to, challenge myself to get out of my own comfort zone. And I started to go to Catholic churches that were predominantly African-American, and I actually found that the worship was very similar to the worship I really enjoyed when I was in Honduras, so it kind of connected. And over time, what I've learned is, I learned something really powerful. If you're a minority, you have to understand the ways of the majority as a survival mechanism. You really need to understand the ways of the majority to survive. If you're in a majority, you don't necessarily have to understand the ways of a minority. You don't have to get out of your own comfort zone and look at your life from different perspectives. And so many things have been very valuable to me in terms of going to St. Elizabeth's. We have great friends. Our kids were baptized there. My wife and I were married there. But also being in a situation where I'm in a minority in an important part of my life over a long period of time has really given me a different perspective. And it's opened up perspectives to me, I think, and made me more sensitive to the need to look at things from different points of view. And it's famously said, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't get out of your comfort zone, you can't necessarily understand the way the world looks to somebody else. And I've often encouraged friends of mine, put yourself in a situation, if you're not in one, put yourself in a situation where you're in a minority. It doesn't have to be a church, it could be a civic organization, it could be anything, but put yourself in a situation persistently and over time where you are not the majority, you're the minority, and just kind of go with that, and you're going to find that you'll learn some things about others, but you're also going to learn some things about yourselves, your own preconceptions, your own limitations. We all have limitations.